Hello everybody and welcome back to Elderberry Sprout. Today I want to show you the collection of witchy stamps that I've carved and also show you my process for carving one. Okay, so first of all, let's get into the stamps. Okay, so let's start off with this box. So first of all, one of the first stamps I carved was this one here, which is a little bottle, which is great for perfume recipes. This is a secondhand piece of rubber that I got from a craft store, a secondhand craft store, and it still works, which is nice. And I put this little block on it. In one of my videos, I think last year sometime, I was talking about witchy creations that I was currently working on. It was in the fall time, and I was putting wooden blocks on a lot of my stamps. So that's when I did all these guys. So I have this little guy, which is a bottle dropper. I have this handmade stamp for products I make that are handmade. I have this little tag stamp, which is a great way to use up any offcuts. I can just turn them into little tags. I have this one, which was one of the first stamps I ever carved, which is actually an eraser. I don't use it too much, but it's a good little keepsake. And I have these, which are stamps that I sized perfectly for my bullet journal. I'm sure you guys have seen me use these in some of my monthly setups. And the cool thing about stamps is if you orient them a certain way, you only need to make a certain number of them. So like I have the new moon, the full moon, and each of the corresponding quarter moons. It just depends on how I stamp it. Then I have this one, which is all the different moon phases. I really liked doing that one. I have this banner stamp, which I know all of you guys have seen a whole bunch. And then we come into the more witchier ones, which are my different suits of the tarot. So I'll just pick all these up and show you them. So this is a set of tarot stamps that I carved. They're on walnut wood chunks, and I really like how they turned out. These are my own personal designs for the most part. This one I kind of copied a little bit off of a stamp that I saw online. And actually I'll tag the creator of this one because they sell sets of stamps that look like this. So make sure I tag them. But yeah, I didn't use a 5-pointed star here. I used a 6-pointed star because of my sacred geometric leanings, but I love how these turned out. Boop, boop, boop. And yeah, just use Fabri-Tac to glue them to their wooden blocks. Oh, and the way that I put the paper on the back, so this, it looks pretty good. You can't really tell too much, but I stamped the stamp onto paper, then cut the paper out and glued it on the top here, so that you're able to not have it bleed too much, because I finished the paper with like a clear coat, so these don't bleed, which is nice. Then I also have this one here, which is just a basic frame that I can put underneath in a different color. Come on. There you go. That I can put underneath my other tarot stamps, so kind of like a background. And I want to make a couple different versions of this in the same size. Maybe one with vines going around it, maybe one with more of a pattern going on. But this is just the basic card. And it's kind of fun that I can do like a pink background with a brown stamp, or have like a light green background with a black stamp. So it really depends on, you can even use that to denote different decks that you're working with. You color code it when you're doing your tarot journaling. This one here is, I think I've showed this on the channel before. Get in frame. This is a sigil I made that is, I made this for myself. So it's stuff that I generally don't share online too much. Sometimes I will. I'll put this on generally clothing, on the tag to denote that this is something I made just for myself. And this is something I need to work on, not sharing absolutely everything. So these guys I did not carve. These were just little pieces of foam that I glued to a block, and I used them in some of my candle packaging, because I do sell Hanukkah candles. And then this is just a stamp that fits in there pretty well. I will put a stamp that I make eventually in here. But until then, I have this vintage, I guess, date stamp. And let's see what, it's so old, I want to see what years it goes to. So from 1975 to 1981, this is my grandma's. So I just essentially roll it to a point where there's no date, there's no year, and I can still use the date portion of it. Oh, but there's my first box of hand-carved stamps. This is pretty much the first set that I did, and then I moved on to making larger stamps after I bought a huge, not huge chunk, but a huge set of chunks of more rubber to carve. So now we're getting more into these guys. This was just a set of stamps that I bought, and it came with a little stamp pad, but it fits perfectly in this box, so I just leave it there because it's so organized and tidy. Let's see, where to start? Okay, so I started making bigger stamps, and I liked just using essentially the whole width of a piece of rubber. So the set that I buy, I got from Amazon, and they come in chunks like this, and each one is packaged individually. And I like to work with as much of the width as I can. There you can see. This one's I think I did one row of stamps on the side and then used the rest of like a corner of this. But it's fun to play with big motifs and then using them in lighter colors on like the backgrounds of pages and stuff. But yeah, once you get into stamp making, it's important to think about especially when you're making larger stamps, what you'll use frequently. There's no point in carving stamps if you're only going to use it 1 or 2 times. So that's why I think the tarot stamps are super useful. It's something I do repeatedly, and it will actually save me time, and it'll be in a pattern that I like. So this is one that I can use for protection or really whatever. I like how that one turned out though. Then I also made this Ouroboros, snake eating its tail. Not too detailed on that one, but a good motif for me. And I made this one, a heart on fire, with an eyeball in the center. I love that flaming heart. So really, may I see, this is kind of a mantra I like to think of may I see the world through love and passion. So yeah, passionate love being the lens through which you see the world. Very exciting. Let's see. Ooh, what's next? Here I have a logo that I made. This one I used a relief system where I used graphite to do a reverse image transfer onto this, and then I carved it so it would stamp in the correct direction. Because I will say, you need to remember if you're doing words or if you're doing anything that has a correct orientation that you need to flip it so that you're not carving, you know, the word Tuesday and then you stamp it and you're like, oh my gosh, the whole word Tuesday is backwards. So I did do a kind of transfer with graphite or a pencil to get this one working, and it works really well. Oh, what's next? A simple star stamp. This has gone so far with me. I love this stamp. I just love it so much, and it's so simple, and you can do a million things with it. So yeah, star stamps. I put these on my packaging a lot, just like stamp the boxes before I send them out. This one I made recently. It's just a little crystal, and I made this out of an offcut of a piece that I had left over. So do keep in mind that it's useful to keep all of your scraps because you can make really tiny stamps that that can look pretty cool. So I'm happy with how that one turned out, as you know, since it was just an offcut. Ooh, what else? I made a couple of crowns. I'd like to use these to stamp on top of collages to give the characters in my collages crowns. And you could even use these crowns as like radially going around in the edge of something, like a circle. So it's kind of like a halo of sparkles coming off of something. But I thought that was pretty fun to have 2 different styles of crowns, especially if you did like gold and you could emboss it and it'd be like a beautiful shiny halo around something of sparkling out. Anyway, I've got some plans for those. Now this one might not look like much, but I absolutely love this stamp. It's honestly probably one of my favorites because I love doing border designs on pages. Here, let me try to find one for you. Okay, so instead of finding an example, I just stamped it really quickly to show you that this type of pattern can be oriented in different ways to make different patterns. So I absolutely love how I can use it to make, I could essentially copy this twice and make it into a circle going all the way around, like a little floral design, or I can use it like this where it's a border alternating around the edge of a piece of paper. And if you do that in a lighter color, or this one's got like a slight gold shimmer to it, which I really love. But if you do that, you have a nice design to the edge of your papers. So I want to make more, not necessarily this like starburst-ish pattern, but I want to make more options for corner design stamps. So that's a good thing to use for offcuts as well, because this is just a 1-inch stamp, and I cut it into 1-inch squares. And I got probably three chunks of this off of an offcut of one piece. So that is a really cool, fun way to use those as well. Another one of the inch size guys is this little bow. I made this one really recently. And I love this little bow. It's so dainty. You can also use this as an edge design if you want, or you can just put it on the corners of things to make it a little bit more decorated and cute. So I like that one a lot. Oh, here we go. This is one that I made quite a while ago. I was originally going to use it as a stamp to use for my wax seals, but it didn't suit it too well because the detail in it, focus there, the detail was a little bit too crude and it wasn't a clean seal. So I ended up doing a different style of seal for that. But yeah, this one still works well as a stamp. And this one, honestly, I might throw away because it's pretty gnarly on the back. But just a couple sparkles. And if you design these things pretty well, you can see how this comes out further on the right and has an indentation on the left. This can also be a repeatable pattern to go along the edge of a piece of paper, but this is pretty much only good in one direction. But yeah, that one's pretty fun too. I might redo this one in a sturdier piece because this is pretty thin. Oh, come on. It's pretty thin and it's also beat up on the back, so might remake him at some point. Oh, here's a tiny offcut I made. Boop. Oh, there we go. It's like a little rupee slash gem shape. So I like him. He's kind of tiny. Then I also, here, I'll just scooch this whole thing up. I did a set of numbers because I like to use numbers for the days of the week in my bullet journal. So now I can have them matching my banner stamp. And I say witchy stamp carving, not all of these are witchy. Some of them are just practical and planner oriented. I mean, my tarot stamps are definitely witchy and like the moon phases, but you know, a bow doesn't necessarily have to be witchy. It's all about how you use these things. Like in theory, this bow could also be used to signify tying something closed, or if you're doing knot magic, you could use it on a knot magic like page in a grimoire or something, or in your book of shadows. So it's really about how you apply these motifs and patterns and the significance behind them that makes them witchy. So it really depends how you use them. But that's those guys. And I showed you the big boys. And then right now, this is a pretty tiny chunk, or it's a big chunk with some tiny stamps that I've been working on. And when I'm feeling meticulous, I'll carve a couple of these because they're really tiny. So we got some astrological signs and some, I guess zodiac signs and the planets. But yeah, I'm still working on this one. And here we have my next, I guess, mission of carving, which is going to be this crystal ball. So let's get it all in frame there. So I'd like to get this one all carved up. I sketched this one out. I looked at some stamp designs and some crystal ball holder designs online, and this is pretty much what I settled on. I like this front leg, and I'd like to duplicate almost this one on the side with a little bit more detail. So sometimes it's good to have an outline and then just goof around, but also it is good to sketch these out because if you make a mistake, there's no, there's no erasing for removing material. So let's get started doing that. Before we get started carving, I want to talk a little bit about the tools that I use. So I've got my little stamp carving kit that I decorated with stamps, as makes sense. I got this little tin, and all of these really just crappy tools. Some of these I got online, like these gouges, and I have a bigger handle that these I guess curved gouges fit into. And then I've got all of these, which I think I just got from a dollar store set of tools. And I particularly like the really sharp ones that are thin and pointy because you can get some really good, like this guy, you can get some really good precise, ooh, come on, let's focus. Really good precise cuts with the nice sharp blade like that. So this is my preferred style of cutting. But for removing larger parts of material, I do opt for these larger gouges. So to start off with carving, I prefer to start around the outside of my carving and then clean out the inside and remove a lot of mass afterwards. So I like to cut away from the lines to remove material and then cut to meet my existing cut at an angle as well. So essentially removing a triangular trough worth of material at a time. And essentially I'm leaving whatever I had in pencil. So I'm cutting out whatever was purple. Now that I got it all outlined, I'm using this, this big remover to get all these big chunks out. This is a really satisfying part. The cool thing about using one of those as well is that sometimes it'll leave behind some texture on the big empty spaces that looks like a stamp. So it kind of makes it a little bit more, I don't know, homemade looking and quaint. And I like the style. And of course you can remove more, you know, and clean it all up if you don't want those lines to be there. But I think it looks pretty cool most of the time. Yeah, and here I'm just doing that same triangular trough cut, removing a triangular mass off of the outside of it. I also, this is just a system that works for me. I like to alternate between difficult and easy tasks. So I did the outside, removed the inside mass, and here's my first stamping test. I like to test it as I go to see my progress as well. But once you do an easy part, then I like to attack a harder part, and then go back to an easier part, and then do a harder part. Because there's always more to do all around a stamp. Yeah, I'm really excited about how I'm planning on actually using this stamp in my journaling practice, because especially in the wintertime, I feel like I have a lot of divination practices about trying to figure out what energies I want to bring into the next year and, what seeds I want to plant in the spring. Oh, there's a good example of when my little trough cut didn't go through to the first cut originally. So I have to do these little hash mark back and forth to remove that little string of rubber there. But yeah, so just divination is super great in the winter time. So the cool thing about having an empty space inside your stamp is you can put whatever you want in there. Like recently I got some metallic sticky, essentially it's like a metallic sticker, but you can cut it into whatever shape you want. And I used one of these stamps and made a giant circular mirrored sticker in the center part of it, which looks really cool. So there's really a lot of ways you can use stamping as an element in, multimedia journaling. And you can see I got a little bit tired of doing the details in the feet of the crystal ball holder, so I went to do the little shiny things on the top. Oh, and all of the mass that I'm removing here, I'm going to be using for other stamps, because there's quite a few chunks there that you can actually use to make some smaller stamps out of, so yeah, that will all be used. I always like to trim the edges off as clean as I can, just so I have less to worry about when I'm actually doing the stamp. Oh, let's test it out. It's looking pretty good so far. You can see on that right side I didn't get enough pressure to get the full circle imprint, but that was just a pressure thing. It's not a stamping issue. But I want to add a little bit more detail around the feet. Yeah, there you go. You can see some of those hash marks left over from how I removed the material in center, and I like how that looks, so I'm going to leave it. But I got to do the detail on the glass ball, I guess Queen Anne style type feet there. Yeah, just doing little tiny relief cuts there. I did want to have fingernails on these little, I guess, claws, but maybe in the future I can get that much detail, but not this time. And that's the nice thing about testing as you're going, is you can figure out what elements you think the stamp still needs. Like, I wanted more definition in between where the legs and like the ring that goes around the holder go, and I feel like that was super useful, is doing the stamps in between. And see, now what I'm seeing is that I need to have some differentiation between where the ball is sitting and the holder itself. So, but yeah, we've made some good progress there. The feet are more defined. You can tell what part is what. Now I just want to fix that bottom of the sphere. So just extending the lines over, doing that same relief cut with my super sharp knife. Yeah, and now you can really tell that it's a sphere sitting in a holder. And after doing a couple of little, I guess, knee wrinkle cuts, we're about done. Let's see what the final product looks like. It's important to get really even pressure when you're doing these large stamps. It would be nice to back this, but... Oh, and there we go. Let's see how much ink I actually had loaded up on there, if I can get a second pressing. Oh, a nice little light one. Well, there you go. That's how that one turned out, you guys. I hope this video helps to inspire you to, in the winter time, now that we've got a little bit of extra time, go ahead and make some stamps for you to use in your journaling practice. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a magical day. Bye.